Greetings, I'm Professor K, and in this short video presentation we're going to be conducting a walkthrough for the Capture the Flag exercise EVM version 1. EVM version 1 was created by iCode and is intended to be an easy beginner boot to root challenge. This lab works best when used with VirtualBox. The CTF is designed to introduce those new to CTF exercises some of the basics of pen testing. For this lab requirement, you will need one install of VirtualBox, one virtual install of Kali Linux, and one virtual install of the target OVA file. Once you have your virtual machines up and running inside of VirtualBox, do ensure that you have the networking for both machines configured for host-only adapter. You're going to go up to Devices, you're going to go to Network, you're going to click on Network Settings, and you're going to select from the Attached To Host-Only Adapter. You'll want to do that on both of your virtual machines. We can assume that we have already reconned and identified our target, which is the site itself. That takes care of step 1 of the hacker's methodology, reconnaissance. Our next step in the hacker's methodology would be network scanning. And now that we have the target network identified, we need to find the IP address of our target machine. And for that, we need to identify our network IP. Now to begin this process, I'm just going to open up a terminal on my Kali machine. And I've zoomed in to the terminal prompt itself so you can better see exactly what it is I'm doing at the terminal. Now, to identify my network IP, I have to find the first 3 octets of my IP address. To do this, I'm just going to type in ifconfig. And you'll notice that Ethernet 0 is the network adapter that we're going to focus with. So that IP address that is assigned to it is 192.168.56.123. The first 3 octets of this IP address are the network IP. That last octet gives us our host IP. I'm now going to go ahead and clear the terminal. Now, if you didn't have any idea of what the network IP for the network was, you could just run netdiscover without any of the switches or the IP address or the subnet mask. But that's going to take a long time. So I've typed in netdiscover space -r, which stands for the range. And I've typed in 192.168.56, which is the network portion of the IP address, .0. And I've given it a /24, which means that you're going to ignore the first 3 octets of this IP address and just focus on the 4th octet, which is the host IP. This is all I want from you. That's approximately 255 IP addresses that can be used as opposed to scanning hundreds and thousands of IP addresses to get the same result. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And netdiscover is now sending out ARP requests to anybody on the network that will listen. And after just a moment, you'll notice that the results come back and it gives you a couple of different IP addresses. Now, the IP address that we're interested in is the 192.168.56.103 IP address. That's going to be the IP address of our target. Now, any IP addresses that I'm showing you, such as the one for my Kali machine or for the target, apply to me. Those are my IP addresses, and your IP addresses may differ. To break out of the scan, I'm just going to type Control-C. That brings me back to the prompt. I'm going to go ahead and type in clear. And now we're going to conduct an Nmap scan. And we're going to continue on with the scanning portion of our hacker's methodology. We're now ready to run that Nmap scan to look for any ports or services that may be available to us for exploitation on our target machine. Now for this particular scan, I've typed in -SC, which is the Nmap switch for launching a number of scripts against the target. There's a number of default scripts that Nmap will run against the target. Now the $S, capital S, that is the typical TCP/IP scan that Nmap runs. The $O is version checking on the target. Now, interestingly enough, I can actually do an aggressive scan And to do that, all I have to do is just get rid of all these. Let's take a look at that real quick. If I get rid of all these switches here, and I type in just capital A, I get the same thing. Let's see how that works. Now, if you get this error message about a DNS server not being available, don't sweat it. Just ignore it. We don't have a DNS server needed because we are on the local area network. So using the switch dash capital A with Nmap gets me the same results as using the dash small letter S capital C dash small letter S capital S dash capital O. The results are exactly the same. But for testing purposes, such as a certification exam, you would want to know all of these different switches and what they actually do when you're running Nmap. And so our Nmap results are in, and it tells us that the following port numbers 22, 53, 80, 110, 139, 143, and port 445 are open and running the following services: SSH, DNS, HTTP, POP3, NetBIOS, and IMAP. And you can scroll up and down here and you can see all the different information about the scripts that were ran as well. And down here closer to the bottom, you'll see that we also have some information about the version of Linux that is running on the target. We get some information about the kernel, we get some OS details, and of course we got the traceroute results, which tells us that the target is just one hop away. Let's go ahead and minimize our terminal, and let's bring up a browser. So we know that we have HTTP running on our target machine, and it's running an Apache web service. So let's take a look at the web page. Now, I consider this the low-hanging fruit when it comes to pen testing. This is the easy stuff. And this is where we can usually find some type of comment, we can find some type of code, and that would be located up inside of the source for that web page. Let's take a look at how we do that. So I'm going to open up a browser, and in the address bar, I'm just going to type in the IP address of the target machine that is running a web service. And it comes up with the default page for Apache. And if we scroll down here just a little bit, we get our first clue. And it says you can find me at a directory located on this machine called WordPress. I'm vulnerable web app. Okay, that's a pretty good clue. Now you can also right click and you can view the selection source and see if anything else is going on in here, and I don't see nothing else except that little bit of a message we were just given about something being vulnerable. Close that out. So we can go ahead and minimize our web browser, send that up to the taskbar. So to confirm that there actually is a directory called WordPress on the Apache server, we can use another application called Derp. Derp is a web content scanner. It looks for existing and or hidden web objects. Derp works by launching a dictionary-based attack against a web server and analyzing the responses. Let's go ahead and open up a fresh terminal. Derp comes pre-installed with your Kali installation. So at the prompt, all I have to do is just type in derp space and the URL for that target machine, and that's going to be http:// the IP address. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Derp comes back right away, and it tells us that there actually is a directory located on that web server called WordPress. And we can see the results right here. Now we know that this is also going to be a WordPress site because we can see the contents down here that tell us that all of these default directories belong to a WordPress application. Let's go ahead and minimize this terminal as well, and let's open up a new terminal. Now another tool that comes pre-installed with your installation of Kali is WPScan. WP stands for WordPress. So we're going to scan that WordPress installation onto the web server, and we're going to find hopefully a username, and then we're going to look for a password. So let's look at what I've typed in here. I've typed in WPScan space -- URL space the URL and the directory we want to look in. So I've typed in http://192.168.56.103/WordPress. That is the directory for WordPress. And then another /, give it a space, a -e, and a space, AT-E, space AP-E, capital U. Let's go ahead and run this. Now, the first time that you run WPScan on Kali, it's going to want to go out to the internet and pull down any updates that it has for the application. So you're going to want to go up inside of your networking, and you're going to want to change on your Kali machine only the adapter from host only adapter to NAT network. You're going to rerun the command. It'll update. When it's done updating, you come back in to the networking settings for just your Kali, and you're going to change it back to host only adapter. You're then going to run that command one more time, and you will get these results. So the user we have identified is called Corrupted Brain. And now we're going to look for a password for this user called Corrupted Brain. Let's go ahead and minimize this terminal. Now, before we can brute force a password using WPScan against the user called Corrupted Brain, we need a word list. Now let's look where these word lists are located. So back on my Kali desktop, I'm going to open up my file system. I'm going to scroll on down here till I come to USR. Open up that directory. On the next window pane to the right, I'm going to open up that shared directory. Now I'm going to scroll all the way down to the W's, and I'm going to look for word list. And there it is. Let's open that up. Now the word list that we want to use is the rocku.txt, but you won't have the rocku.txt by default because it's in an archive, because it's rather large. So what you're going to want to do is when you get in here for the first time is right click on the archive for the rocku.txt, and you're going to select extract here. That is going to give you the text file for the rocku.txt word list. Let's go ahead and close that out. Let's go ahead and bring back up our last terminal. And what we're going to do here is just go ahead and clear it. So again, we're going to do a brute force against that user up inside of that WordPress site called Corrupted Brain using WPScan. So again, I've typed in the command WPScan space --URL, that same URL that we had before, going up inside of that WordPress directory, giving it a -U, which stands for user, and the name of this user is Corrupted Brain. Give it a space, --P. This stands for password. Now, I'm going to have to give it the path that I want it to use to find that rocku.txt. So it's the same path that we use to go find or look at the rocku.txt, /USR, /share, /wordlist, and finally /rocku.txt. Now this is a very particular command, so make sure that the switches are at the right color. Now when you copy and paste this the first time, they might not be in color. They could just be the same default text of white. That means that the switches are not being read or understood correctly by the bash shell. So make sure that this happens because this is a very particular command. Hopefully this is going to work one time and we don't have to troubleshoot it. Let's go ahead and give it a go. Hit enter. And you'll notice down at the bottom, it begins the scanning of the word list for the password for our user, Corrupted Brain. And so our WP scan completed in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. It found a valid combination for the username corrupted_brain with a password of 24992499. We're now going to use a well-known exploit that's available to us up inside of Metasploit. This is going to allow us to establish a reverse shell, which is something every pen tester wants to do. We're going to get access, as limited as it is, to the target machine using a terminal. And so that's going to conclude this first two parts of the hacker's methodology. network scanning and enumeration. And we're going to continue on in the second video with doing the exploitation and privilege escalation steps. So I'll see you in the next video, part 2.